Welcome in everybody to Girl, How'd You Get That Gig? For my partner, Celeste Gehring, I'm Amy G, and we've got another exciting and informative interview for you all. It is an honor to get the word out about an absolute gamer, Cosmina Schulman, who's the Senior VP of Strategic Partnerships at NESN, also known as New England Sports Network. Welcome to the podcast, Celeste. Get going on the questions.
Let's talk about your job, your day-to-day activities that you do as a Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships. Like, take us through your average day.
Oh, goodness. So I love my job because no 2 days are the same. Every day is different and challenging in its own unique way. But a lot of what I'm doing is figuring out the future, right? I'm obviously trying to set a vision, a strategic vision that then I can get my whole team behind. Also, more recently, I've been kind of setting company visions and weighing in a little bit on kind of what the FSG vision might look like, ways that might grow, and then working closely with Delaware North to explain to them how this media landscape is changing, because boy, it's changing quick and we're all trying to get our arms around it. But a lot of it is based around, again, meetings, figuring out what tomorrow looks like, and then strategically making sure that we put the pieces in place to be able to action on those to continue to be successful, in 5-10 years from now.
Wow. I mean, that's convoluted. Like it's a whole department of sports that people really don't know a whole lot about. And it is a driving force for sure. I want to back up though. I want to get a little bit of little Cosmina and what she was like. And I have that you grew up in Utica, New York, but what was your childhood like, and how did sports play a role, if any, for you? Were you an athlete? Were you a fan? What was that like?
Well, if you really want to see little Cosmina, I can invite my 6-year-old up here and he can sit right next to me and you'll get a perfect look into what little Cosmina was like. Because, man, I'll tell you, I don't know if the world is ready for the male version of Cosmina, but he is coming. I grew up in a really loving Italian family where honestly, family was everything. Family was king. Camaraderie. We played a lot of sports, played card games. We did a lot together. We had a lot of fun together. And education, people hate when I say this, but education was second to what we did. First and foremost was family. Family was above everything, a really warm, welcoming, close group knit of people that I think people just really wanted to be around, right? Always having a lot of fun, always eating around the dinner table. I mean, you come around, we feed you. There's no question about that. So a lot of my childhood has really fond memories of making pasta with my nanny and my poppy, getting together and playing sports as a family. I wasn't a huge athlete, but I was a cheerleader. And when I think about my family, it's this back and forth of playing, but then cheering, We always rooted each other on, and we always inspired each other, and we were always celebrating the wins, right? Just a really, really positive upbringing. I tell this story sometimes where I talk about my father and how he didn't really want me to go to college. He didn't want me to move away from the family. And I was the first one that actually left the nest and went away to school. And I think that was really hard for my family. I tell this story sometimes, but my father actually didn't want me to go away to college. And that was because he didn't want me to leave and be far away from home, because family was such a strong point of who we were. But they always say, Cosmina, you have wings, meaning, I'm always going everywhere. And it's because I loved meeting new people. I loved going new places. I loved problem solving. I loved learning new things. So, for me, it was really important to go away from home, learn something new, continue to grow my skill set, but then always be able to obviously come back, right? Living in upstate New York, I've never lived super far from there, meaning it's always, Chicago's the furthest that I've ever lived, because family is super, super important to me. And actually one of the reasons why I live in Boston, because I can, quickly drive home. It's 3.5 hours to get home. So that's kind of, a little bit of my upbringing and kind of where Cosmina came from.
I love that. We have upgraded your t-shirt now to say I'm a closer with wings, which is going to be amazing. It's going to be a bestseller. I love it.
I can't wait to see this t-shirt by the end of this interview.
Exactly.
I'll have my Zach design it for us. He's my little
yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, you went to Manhattanville College. What went into that decision, and what did you major in?
Sure, that's a great question. So actually what went into that decision was my father was very adamant that he wanted me to stay home and stay close. I always was drawn to New York City. And the only that I could really go there was if I got a scholarship. So I got a scholarship for dance. They accepted me there, and then I was able to offset the cost of college a little bit and make it a little bit more affordable for myself. So I had a minor in dance and a major in communications. And again, what was so exciting about being so close to the city was I was constantly popping in and out of the city, meeting as many people as I can, taking classes, networking, which I didn't even know what that term meant at that time, but doing so much of that in the city. And it really provided me with, I think, a lot of really great opportunities when I got more into my professional career.
Let's stay with that, because I love that you drop networking. We drop that all the time in this podcast and say how important it is for people watching, looking to work in the sports industry. Your relationships really are everything. So in college, often there are internship possibilities or programs that you can join. Several of our guests have been part of those. I did one at Davis where I worked at CNN in Washington, D.C. Did you have anything like that you would suggest or, pass on, like, make sure you do this, make sure you look for this program? Or what can you say about that networking time while you were in college? What advice do you give to kids in school or looking to work in the industry about how to network?
Yeah. So whenever I'm helping, I do a lot of, I know Celeste, you do too, but a lot. And it's just like ingrained and rooted in who I am. And, I hope we get to talk about things that put gas in your tank. That is one of the things that puts gas in my tank that keeps me going, right? Being able to mentor. And whenever I'm talking about mentoring, I always talk about networking, but not in the traditional sense, in the sense more of creating relationships and always talking about what your end game is. I love this story that I have where, I'll talk to anybody. And I'm always curious about, what people do, where they're from, all these types of questions. But I was up in Vermont and I was skiing. This was when I first joined NESN, so 2015. And on the way up in the chairlift, of course, I start talking to the guy next to me, right? I'm just chatting with him. I'm telling him, oh, yeah, I just moved to Boston, blah, blah, blah. Come to find out, it's the CMO of LLB, who I had been trying to get on NESN for the last 6 months, right? And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, right? So we start this great conversation. We hit it off. We chat, get all the way up to exchange contact information. 2 weeks later, I'm back in front of the guy pitching him a sponsorship with NESN. But again, that would have never happened, right? That didn't happen from me going on LinkedIn, finding somebody with the right title, doing a cold text, email, direct message, whatever you want to call it, and then getting a meeting. No, it legit happened just in my day to day, right? So
Organically.
you never know. Yeah, exactly. And you just never know who you're going to meet, and you don't know how many misconnections there are until you actually start talking to the person next to you when you're pumping your gas, the person across, and just striking up natural conversation. That has been the key to my success, I feel like, is not doing it at those networking conventions when everybody knows, okay, you're here because you're trying to sell me something, especially, me in sales, but doing it just organically throughout my day-to-day life. However, the other way, right, is definitely through, I feel like LinkedIn is another great tool. A warm intro, you have a mutual friend reaching out to somebody saying, hey, can I buy you coffee and learn about your journey? That's it. People love talking about themselves. So just by asking, hey, if you see somebody who has the job that you want today, you should reach out to them and say, hey, I'd love to buy you coffee or, buy you lunch. Would you be open and just meeting with me and telling me how you got to your job? I think that like 8 out of 10 times people will say yes to them. And it might take you, I don't know, it might take you a couple of times before you land the right person, but that organic type of networking before you even need anything, has always been the way that I've been able to get to my next job. And then, yeah, of course, you do need the resume. I think it's really hard now to stand out in the sports space, right? Lots of people want to be in sports. It's definitely an exciting place to be. So you do need some of those key resume builders that's going to help you stand out. But at the end of the day, I mean, you are one piece of paper amongst hundreds. If you have a warm connection or an established relationship already, or somebody you can go to and say, hey, Cos, do you know anyone at Reebok? I just, I saw this job. Do you think that you know anybody? Can you make a connection for me? You're obviously a lot more likely to land a job, I believe, that way.
It takes down people's defenses thinking somebody always wants something from me. Every time somebody reaches out to me on LinkedIn, they want something from me. When you're able to ask for, could I take you for a cup of coffee, lunch, I always pass along informational interview. Could I just have some of your time? They take down the defenses of people. We're like, yeah, because I want to help, but I can't help everyone. So then people tend to like hold back information. And your suggestions are fantastic because they're going to get them in the door for sure. I like it.
Yeah. Can I give one other suggestion?
Yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely.
So the other one that I always tell people is when you do go to these networking things, or you're at a big conference for work, or I always refer to like Red Sox spring training, right? All of the principals from FSG are there. Lots of really important people go. Always work out in the gym in the morning. That to me, I always get like, honestly, I always, successful people, right? Every successful person, oh, what do you do? Oh, I work out. It's part of my routine. I work out. Blah, blah, blah. If you are going to these events and you aren't working out in the morning and talking to the person to the left or the right at the treadmill, you are missing out on an opportunity. So get up early and get to that gym.
Early bird gets the worm. And by the way, Celeste, I am counting on Cosmina's motto that people love to talk about themselves for our podcast to have wings as well. Because we're counting on people wanting to talk about themselves.
They do. They love it. I think everybody loves talking about themselves, but at least that's been my experience.
Right. But Cosmina, how do you balance that? Because, I remember when I moved to Boston and you and I really didn't interact because it was during the pandemic and you were having your baby and it was a whole craziness with the pandemic. But when I did meet you and we were at a WISE event, I just remember, and I was telling Amy this, you were so authentic with your leadership style and really making people feel included. Like you came up to me and you talked to me, you talked to the next person. And when I was talking to Amy about this, I said, the old analogy was as women, we would pave the way and we would drive our cars and we would say, okay, get in another car behind us and drive. But I think, but with you, it's almost like, I feel like you're driving the car, but you're like, hey, get in my car. My door's open, but I'm going to pull you in to be a part of it. And I think that is just such a gift that you give to the world. How do you balance that between, I know you have to be authentic, which is part of it, but also, not missing out on those opportunities for sales too?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I love the car analogy. And I'll go back to what I said earlier, is like gas in your tank, right? And for me, that gives me gas in my tank, right? Making people, and I think it's also the Italian upbringing too, right? Like that's how I felt. Yeah. That's how I felt value. That's how I always, was excited and enthusiastic about going to Sunday dinner or whatever it might be. So it is who I am. I recognized it a long time ago. I was fortunate in the way that like I recognized this was something that brought me joy, helping women, bringing them along, making space for them at the table, being the voice for them, even if they weren't in the room. I couldn't do that unless I knew what those voices wanted to say, right? So I had to go out of my way to ask those questions, to have conversations that maybe I normally wouldn't. So then when I did sit at the table, I could speak for some of the women who weren't in the room. And again, very early on, I recognized like, this is what excites me. This is what drives me. This is what is authentic to who I am. I have to keep doing this, so it doesn't, I think a lot of times, especially when I'm talking again to women and they're saying, oh, I want to be in sports, how do I be in sports? It's like, okay, listen, I'm going to tell you what works for me. That might not work for you. And that's okay. Don't be me, be you. My goal in sharing this with you is maybe just to inspire a different perspective or a way of thinking. It's not to give you the blueprint for how to be successful, because if you do what I did, you're not me, it probably won't work. But my goal in sharing these tidbits with you is that maybe it sparks something in you or helps you recognize something within yourself that then you can build your own blueprint that's going to help you get there. So again, just like really early on, I was like, and I still do this for any new women who come to NESN. I try to grab coffee with them. I try to have, an hour meeting with them. I try to, whether it's a company meeting or an outing or whatever, pull them aside and be like, hey, how's your experience? Tell me about your life. Like, tell me about what you like to do. Because it allows me to be a better executive for NESN, but also I get pure joy out of those conversations.
Yeah. I think Bill Clinton wrote the book. It was something like giving is the most selfish thing you could do, like, because you get so much back when you give.
Sure.
And I could tell, I told Celeste, I said, we got to talk about her family because clearly that plays a role in your managing style. Let's talk a little bit about being an executive at NESN, your family upbringing. Again, not everybody comes from a large Italian family that was super supportive, right? And like, not everybody loves to engage with people. Hi, I'm one of them. And like, talk to somebody on a ski lift next to them. Like, you have a set of skills like built for what you're doing. But that doesn't mean that somebody who doesn't have those isn't going to be good at sales as well, or find another position in sports that they're going to shine in. But how do those things, the family, your love of getting to know people, and let's add being a mom of 3, play a role in your managing style? How is it received? Is there a good story you can share about how it's received, and a story of like where it's been challenging for somebody on your team to work with?
Yeah, sure. It's funny. I'm smiling as I'm listening to you talk because I recently went back to get my MBA and I just took a leadership course, right? And we've been taking this leadership course and, how to be a strong leader, how to be a confident leader, how to be the leader that you want to be. And as I'm sitting here in this course, I'm starting to laugh to myself. And then, of course, the teacher's like, what's so funny, Cos? And I'm like,
Cosmina, something to share?
I'm laughing because it does sound like how I lead, but it actually sounds more like how I parent, right? And it's funny because there is such a correlation, I feel like, as a mom. It is a superpower. Just another tool to put in your tool belt. I've learned so much about myself through seeing my kids, through my kids' eyes. Again, my son is a spitting image of me. So it's so funny when I see him do things and then I'm instantly, I start yelling. I'm like, oh my God, Cos, this is you. So I do think that the way that I parent does, they're very similar, right? And again, I think that that's just authentic to who I am. But yeah, there's times where I walk into a room and I have this level of energy. And there's definitely been times where this level of energy is not appropriate for whatever reason, right? Bruins just lost the first round of the playoffs. And I'm coming in guns a-blazing because I'm super positive and I'm always trying to turn challenges into opportunities. And I've had to do some self-regulation and just be more self-aware of, listen, being positive and being optimistic and being who I am is good 90% of the time, right? But being able to shift and be situationally aware of when that type of energy is not appropriate or just, isn't going to get the results that we want. That definitely has been something that I've had to learn. However, in the same breath, when I moved from New York to Chicago, I've told this story before, but when I moved to New York to Chicago, somebody who I really, admired made this suggestion to me, like, maybe you want to tone it down. Maybe you want to be a little bit more reserved. Maybe you don't want to share every thought that's on your mind with everybody. You're going to a new town. You can be a new Cosmina. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I really respect this person. Maybe I should be a new Cosmina. And I got there and it was so far away from who I normally was that everything in my life got flipped upside down. I mean, my relationships weren't working. I was having a tough time even like communicating with my family, like things not even like related to work. My sales started to slip. My clients saw immediately through the fact that I wasn't being authentic. They could see that I was being reserved, see that I was being conservative. So I do think that there's like there's a thin line, right? You talk about balance and like being situationally aware. There's like, you want to be who you are, but you also want to recognize, at times where you might just need to pull it back a little bit or tone it down because the situation maybe doesn't call for that, or maybe the people who you're working with. Like, I'll give you an example. When I deal with the product people in digital, I try to definitely be a little bit more tactical, slow down a little bit more thoughtful through my responses because, their skill set is completely different. So being able to, switch it around when you can, I think that's what makes me actually a really good salesperson and hopefully a good manager too.
Chameleon, for sure. And knowing to read the room. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your 3 job markets that you've been at: Boston, Chicago, New York. Each one was probably so different. What did you take from each experience into the next experience?
So I worked in sports in all 3, right? And I thought New York was a crazy sports town till I got to Chicago. And I was like, whoo, Chicago's nuts, right? And then I got to Boston and I feel like the wheels really flew off. So, it's interesting to me because in New York, there's so many different teams that you could root for that the sports market is almost like fragmented in a way. And people obviously feel strongly about the Yankees and feel strongly about the Mets, and, there's sports teams in their own way, but there's so many different teams that people are rooting for that you don't really have that true like camaraderie like you do when you get to Chicago. And I think in Chicago, people are nice. They're very nice. They love their, yeah, I loved them. I mean, I love they love their sports. They're great people. They're nice people. I'll never forget, every meeting that I would go to, because I was new, I'd be like, all right, so like, tell me about the people who were about to walk into the room. Like, like tell me what each person's like and just things I should know. And nobody ever wanted to say a bad thing about anybody. So I was like, oh, they're great. Okay.
Everybody's great. Yeah. Oh yeah. The Bears. Yeah. I love the Bears. Yeah.
And I'd be like, okay, this isn't helpful. But then you get to Boston, and Boston was the first place that I received a death threat at, an organization because we let an announcer go. I mean, people were legit showing up at NESN angry. And, in a traditional newsroom, you see that a lot, right? Because you're talking about lots of different things, and they typically have like bulletproof glass, and, there's big security measures taken in a traditional newsroom. But at an RSN, at a regional sports network, I mean, you don't usually see that until you go to Boston. I mean, even just the AM radio alone in Boston is like nothing I've ever experienced before.
I think Boston and Philly are like rivals for meanest fans.
Yes. They're
I am diehard loyal, but kind of mean. I mean, Philly booed Santa Claus, like, not nice.
Yeah. I mean, I like to spin that as passion, but
yes, right. Well, that's why you do what you do.
With passion, yes.
That is why you do what you do. There it is, you guys. Strategic partnerships. She just laid down the spin.
Exactly. There you go. Watch out.
So, can I ask you about, just to simplify, really, for anybody listening and saying, what exactly is strategic partnerships? Like, how would you describe the Department of Strategic Partnerships and its impact on the sports scene? How do they connect?
Sure, of course. So what we do in my group is we, in very simple terms, we generate ad revenue. So there's 3 lines of business at NESN: the affiliate business, right? This is how regional sports networks make money. Affiliate agreements, that's one way. The second way is my group, which is ad sales and revenue. And then the third way is our newest stream, which is the direct to consumer product we have, which obviously, is the newest one for lots of different entities. But what my group does is I like to refer to us as media consultants and problem solvers. So we sit down with brands and we say to them, what are you trying to achieve? Tell me as much about your business as you possibly can. Who's the customer? What are you trying to hit for revenue goals? What is, product launches you have? I mean, we almost act as a therapist in that first meeting, right? Like, tell me everything, tell me all your problems. And then we really go back and we try to figure out what is a multimedia platform platform solution for what you're trying to achieve. And obviously, a lot of times it's utilizing the brand equity that the Red Sox and the Bruins have and connecting with that and then building upon on it to really ring the cash register or generate ROI. So what I really challenge my team again with is like, I want you to be media experts. I don't want you just to sell NESN, the Red Sox and the Bruins. I want, if, you know, Rodenheiser is trying to, which is a local company here, is thinking about spending a penny on marketing or really on anything. I want you to be their first phone call, even if we don't have a solution for the problem they're trying to solve. You know, that is really what I task my team with and the types of relationships that I want them to grow and build upon, because that puts us in the best position, even if we don't have something to solve the problem they have. Well, now they can come to me and say, hey, Cos, I had a client who called for this. We don't have this. So I sent them there or here or whatever. But if I start to see a trend, okay, now we have 4 clients asking for something and we don't have it. Okay, we need to build it. How do we
implement this?
Exactly. So it allows us to, again, be really forward facing. And that's what I feel like a lot of my job is. Obviously, monetizing and optimizing all the great buzzwords that come along with strategic partnerships on the inventory we have today, but also how do we build out products and opportunities for the future?
Love it. What's been one of your best deals you've made and maybe one of your worst that you could share?
Oh gosh. Okay, let me think. One of our best was our Southwest deal that we did. So what I love about working in media space and specifically with regional sports networks is we don't have to abide by the team exclusivities. So, you know, team deals, right? You have one airline, you have one bank, you have one auto, but we don't have to do that. But our product is so impactful that we can create partnerships on TV that actually makes the viewer and the fan think that we are the official partner. So again, with Southwest, JetBlue was in the park. So they were locked out of the park. And they were basically like, we want to be in front of the Red Sox fan. We can't be in the park. So they just thought that Red Sox was over for them. And we're like, oh, hold on, wait a minute. You could be the official airline of the broadcast of the Red Sox on NESN. And they were like,
different space,
different audience. And when I tell you, we crushed it, right? Like they were on the screen. We did giveaways. Again, creating these swim lanes, figuring out, being a problem solver, trying to figure out, okay, we can't do that, but what can we do? That was like one of my favorite deals. And the reason why it was one of my favorite deals is we actually had a company come in and do a survey, and we asked people as part of the survey, fans of the Red Sox, whether they watch NESN or not, we said, who is the official airline of the Red Sox?
They thought it was Southwest.
So I love it.
I know for sure working in baseball, it's not Southwest.
Yeah.
I know what the teams fly. I fly Southwest all the time. It's my official airline. I'll tell you that for sure.
Yeah. So I love that one because we were able to problem solve, but then also ring the cash register and figure out a great way for brands to be still associated with teams, but not have to spend, and again, when you go directly to the team, there's huge costs that are associated with those IP rights, but a lot of times they're static signage. You can't change out messaging. There's limitations to them, right? So it was great to be able to have this with them. Okay, so that was my best one. My worst one, I'm trying to think about this one. Oh, well, I'm not gonna give the name. Is that okay?
It's okay.
I hope to have a relationship with this company down the line.
Yeah.
So kind of along the same lens, we recognized that in one specific category, we were getting $0 to little dollars in this category. And so we wanted to create an official designation for, again, taking this win that we had, turning it into something great. However, we did not manage expectations of what an unofficial official designation looks like. And even though, I mean, it was super clear in the contract, I felt like we said it a bunch of times. This brand still went out and actually created packaging that included the team logo and their name on it, didn't run it by us. And we had, I mean, it was unfortunately a complete disaster, and a complete nightmare. And when I look back on it, I mean, we did have more of a junior account executive working on this that I think was just so super excited to have their first major sale, that even though when it got to me, I was making sure all the T's were crossed and I's were dotted. But I think that we were over promising in the initial sale, and it turned out pretty disastrous for us. Luckily, we did not end up with a lawsuit, but that was definitely a direction that we were going in. So again, you know, it's managing expectations. I'm sure somebody has said this before, but under promise, over deliver. But also it's managing people, and salespeople. They're phenomenal. They want to do a great job, but they're also looking at their slice of the pie a lot of times, right? They're not looking at the big picture. That's obviously my job, but a lot of times, you know, it's explaining the big picture to them so they have that reference, even though you just want them focused on that slice. So yeah, we were able to luckily correct that, and hopefully we'll get the client again down the road.
I really appreciate your transparency in that. I'm hoping I can get into another topic with you and you'll be transparent about it. Sales in general. I think often it gets a bad rap regarding like personality. They get commission. I think other people in television stations or at teams often feel like sales goes and sells something, but we have to execute it, right? On the production side, or sales used Amy G to front this, but nobody asked me, but became part of this package. I'm not going to make any money off of it, but they are. There's a lot of internal bickering at times.
For sure.
And so, and I don't often, like, if you think sales, I think car salesperson, and I'm like, oh God, I don't want to deal with this person, you know, like, well, let me go talk to my manager and see what kind of deal I can get. And you know, it's BS, right? So how do you deal with that kind of concept or stigma about sales? How do you, I can tell you, because you're so authentic, that's why people want to work with you, but not everybody is in sales. So how do you deal with that stigma perception? And if somebody on your team is like that, how do you work with them?
Yeah. So this is a great question, and I'm going to try to answer it as honestly as I possibly can. But I mean, on my team, I don't deal with that. So I don't care who, you could be the best salesperson ever. If you are not a good cultural fit, if we are getting, you know, a bad rap in sales internally throughout you're gone. And I think what happens a lot with salespeople is the best salespeople are the hardest to manage, and managers don't want to put in the time to manage them, or they want to ignore bad behavior because they're also obviously incentivized, you know, with commissions and with sales, and they obviously have a goal too. There was lots of in-team fighting. I'll leave it at that. At NESN, when I first joined, I don't even know how many years ago that was, but we made lots of changes to the sales team. We also made lots of changes for how people got paid their commission. And we forced folks, for lack of a better word, or maybe incentivized folks, is a better word, to work together collaboratively. And we made sure that, again, nothing went out the door unless it was approved by production, because the relationship at that point between sales and production was, there was so much friction. Yeah. You know, and we need them just as much as they need us. But it wasn't being received that way. You know, it was like sales thought like, well, they need us. We don't, you know, we don't need them. They need us. If we sell it, they're going to sell it. And it really was a mind shift change, and also some personnel changes. But it was explaining, again, the bigger picture, why we needed production, how important that was, and then actually holding people accountable for bad behavior. I mean, we will not pay or put in orders that are not approved by the head of new business, right? If you sell something and you turn around and you go to give it to her and she hasn't seen it, it's not going in. So, it took a couple of those for the sales team to be like, oh, wait, okay, they're serious. We really have to follow this way because we're not going to get paid unless, we follow the process. But I think that we've gotten to, and there was growing pains. I mean, it was not like super easy. But I think we've gotten to a point where like everybody truly respects each individual's function and department. And when there are missteps, we address them quickly, but also there are mistakes that are going to happen. So of course, every now and then we still have somebody going out. One more thing to that, because you brought it up, Amy, we actually started an influencer program within NESN where we bring the talent along and they actually have a set cost. So, a way to, again, include people and make them feel like they're part of the sale, but also compensate them.
Absolutely.
For their time. And I think the way that we've done it, and, we've just slowly started rolling it out. But this is another really great example of like the influencer space is huge. It's $1 billion market. It's crazy the amount of money that brands are spending in that space. It's a space now that we could play in, but it also solved this internal problem that we were having with talent feeling like, hey, you sold this without me even consenting to it. So I thought that was a really interesting solution.
I think that is the best thing I've ever heard, because what you're doing in that, besides them getting a piece of the pie, right? Because their likeness is being used in the sale and part of why a potential customer is going to go with you, but it makes them feel valued.
Yeah. And you know what? It's been so great because like now they're like, oh, well, I want to come on the meeting with you. Oh, well, I want to do, and like we've actually
now they're in.
Generate. Yeah. And Celeste, do you remember the dining playbook program that we used to work on? That was like the most profitable non-pro product that we had on NESN. And it was because the two talent that we had on it, we used as influencers before influencers were even a term.
Right.
So we basically have taken that and just kind of replicated it throughout some of our other programming.
Super smart.
Cosmina, we could talk to you all day, but we know you have work to do. So last question for you. Tell us a little bit about WISE, Women in Sports Information, Women in Sports and Entertainment. You handle that in Boston. And I think Holly Burgess is the president, right? One of your partners in crime. And you also, are in charge of the women of NESN. So talk a little bit about both those programs, what they mean to you, and basically the mentorship piece.
Yeah. Thank you for asking me about those, because those are my two favorite things to talk about. I think WISE is a phenomenal organization, and I've actually been a member in every single city that I lived in. So New York, Boston, and Chicago, which just allowed me to establish a network of women who were, also vested in bringing women up through the ranks and giving them the skill set and the confidence that they need for this business. It was a really nice consistent to have in every city. And when I got to Boston, I just knew that I wanted to be sitting on the board and part of that positive experience for women. Again, it's just kind of who I am. It's the fabric of Cosmina to be able to help other women. So running the one, as we call it, WON, Women of NESN, ERG at NESN too has been really impactful for me and really rewarding. I love the fact that women will come to me and ask for advice, ask for mentorship, ask for allyship. But then I now have the ability and impact to be able to build out programmings, build out resources, build out, assets that they need in order to actually be successful, So I always have, even at like a young age, I remember I was 23. I was a new AE at Fox, the youngest AE that they've ever had. And another female joined. And she was a little bit older than me, but she hadn't been to Fox before, right? She hadn't worked on our floor, and it was mostly men. And I remember, like, I just went up to her and I was like, hey, do you want to go out to lunch? Like, let me give you the run by run here. And after lunch, she was like, thank you so much for like being a mentor. And I was like, that's what I'm doing. Like, I didn't even know what it was, But yeah, it is. There's been too many times that I have been the only female around a table, knowing that there are other women with unique perspectives, unique skill sets that should be sitting around that table with me, but weren't. And I think that my one mission is to help women find bigger versions of themselves, but to also bring up their name in a room full of opportunities. I mean, I will never stop doing that because there are so many women, in my opinion, in this industry, in sports, that deserve a seat at the table that haven't found their seat yet.
I know we're supposed to wrap, but I have to play off of that. We can't end on that.
I thought we can't end on that.
I know. I mean, so let's talk a little bit about the landscape of women in your world of sports. You know, this is a lot of why we interview women. I think this podcast is meant for anybody who wants to work in the sports industry, but we wanted to interview women to not only have a piece of empowerment, but to hear about where we still need to go as women, whether it's supporting each other, like you're saying, whether there's not enough seats at the table and there should be, especially in a very equitable department, right? When we're talking about getting on the field and coaching and playing, we're talking about a much different situation regarding gender. But where you are, where have you seen the landscape of women come? Where do we still need to go?
Yeah. So I think my sales team is a great start, right? When I first started, it was one female account executive who was a mother of 3, who miraculously got to work remote on Wednesdays, one day a week. And now my sales team is half and half, a little bit more, mostly women. But we've been able to pull women up to those, I would say, mid-level, mid-manager roles, right? Even when I look at like NESN team, and we have like our all manager offsites, 40, about half of the room, 40 people, about half of the room is women, right? We do a great job there. But then when you start to look at the managers who manage managers, that landscape looks a little different. And then when you start to look at the executive table, that landscape still looks very similar to what it did, 5, 10, 15 years ago. So I think
man.
Yeah. But you would think, right? You would think that room, especially because that's where the most quote unquote powerful, influential people are, that room would be the room that maybe had the most, because those are the people who can make the decisions and say, hey, we need more women around here. Okay, let's do. But I still see women shying away from conversations in that room. Even talking to some of my counterparts, I'm like, how do we get more women in this room? How do we get more diversity in this room? How do we get, different perspectives in this room? I'm still struggling to see people take action. They're saying all the right things now, right? I think we're getting there. They're starting to understand it. But we're definitely not to the point where we have a lot of women. You have maybe 1 or 2, and it's kind of like okay, yep, we did it. We got our own box. Yep, we got our 2. But you're not finding more evenly, even playing fields there.
Right,
so
right.
I think that's where we still have a lot of work to do. And, I'm not scared to speak up in those rooms. And I really would encourage, if anybody is listening to this podcast and you want to join forces on this is my jam. I love talking about this, and I love figuring out ways that we can continue to be impactful at that higher level. And then last thing I'll say about that is I understand how hard it is at that level when you're juggling all of these things, right? And we started talking about, I have 3 kids under the age of 6. I'm going back to get my MBA. I'm juggling a lot. I understand how hard it is to make time for mentorship and allyship at that point in your career. But goodness, it is the most important time to be able to make that impact for other women. So please, please, please find the time.
Make the time. Make the time. You can. And I feel really good, Celeste, that Cosmina's sitting at that table. She's going to get them.
Watch
it. Thank you so much for joining us, Cosmina. This was a great conversation. Truly insightful.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. Let's do it again next week.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
With wine.
With wine.
You've been listening to Girl, How'd You Get That Gig with hosts Amy G and Celeste Gehring. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and follow us on Instagram. The handle is @GirlGigPodcast. Followers and subscribers are automatically entered to win our giveaway prizes, announced every other Wednesday on our Instagram page. Until our next episode, go get that gig.